Welcome, age of vintage society. Like many young men, Elvis Presley longed to surround himself with gorgeous, glamorous women who adored him. It's no secret that the chemistry between Elvis and his leading lady in 1964's Viva Las Vegas didn't dissolve when the cameras stopped rolling. In Elvis and Me, Priscilla Presley describes Ann-Margret as the woman she feared most in the period leading up to her marriage. What if Elvis Presley had chosen Ann-Margret? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Elvis Presley engaged in a thrilling affair during the filming of Viva Las Vegas with Ann-Margret, but his friends in the Memphis Mafia over the years were convinced if he had chosen her over Priscilla Presley, he would have survived his bout of substance abuse. When most people think of Elvis Presley, there are a few things that come to mind: groundbreaking rock and roll music, infamous hip gyrations, a mischievous lip curl, and his beautiful wife, Priscilla. However, people who lived through Elvis's reign may recall another lovely lady in the King's life. Ann-Margret was not only Elvis's co-star, but was also his lover at one point. Their relationship complicated things with Priscilla. Let's see how the pair fared in those early days, and why they ultimately fell apart. Ann-Margret's voice was compared to that of Elvis. Ann-Margret, a Swedish actress, emerged in Hollywood in the late 1950s. She was just 22 years old at the time when she met the king of rock and roll. As a singer, her voice was recognized for its similarity to Elvis. Since their vocal qualities were comparable, it's no surprise the pair was bound to work together eventually. Some even referred to Ann-Margret as the female version of Elvis. Shortly after her rise to stardom, she began working with Elvis's backup singers, the Jordanaires. Ann-Margret's popularity further blossomed when she covered his famous song, Heartbreak Hotel. Some in Elvis's entourage believed choosing which one to marry was a difficult decision for him. "I've always said it was a toss-up between Priscilla and Ann," said Presley cousin Billy Smith. Marty Lacker weighed in. "I knew Elvis had to make a decision between them, and I thought if push came to shove, he would choose Ann." And according to George Klein, while everyone knew he was absolutely smitten with Priscilla and sincerely wanted to build a life around her, it was also obvious that he was honestly overwhelmed by the feelings he had for Ann-Margret. If it really was a difficult decision for Elvis, it was made easier by the stark contrast between the choices. Priscilla was only 14, a child really, when Elvis, then 24, met her. In addition to her appearance and personality, by all accounts, including Priscilla's, he was attracted by her innocence, which presented him the opportunity to mould her into the ideal marriage partner someday. When she moved into Graceland in 1963, Elvis began controlling every aspect of her life, including her appearance and relationships with others inside and outside his inner circle. Elvis. A woman has her place. Only later did I realize how important it was to Elvis to always appear in control in front of me, Priscilla noted. Whenever I stated my own opinions too strongly, especially if they differed from his, he'd remind me that his was the stronger sex, and as a woman, I had my place. Elvis even discouraged Priscilla from continuing her education after high school. He figured I didn't need it, and I agreed. He wanted me to be his totally, free to go to him in an instant if he needed me. He stopped sleeping with his wife Priscilla because she'd had their baby and made her a mother figure instead. Ann-Margret was a completely different kind of woman from Priscilla. Although still a young woman, she exuded self-confidence and worldliness. In addition to sharing the same profession, Elvis and Ann-Margret were also well matched on a personal level. The more time Elvis and I spent together, the more we learned how eerily similar we were, she explained. Some things were obvious, such as a love of motorcycles, music and performing. We'd both also experienced meteoric rises in show business. We liked our privacy, we loved our families, we had a strong belief in God. As they spent more time alone together, they grew closer and closer, according to Ann-Margret. We were indeed soulmates, shy on the outside, but unbridled within. We both lived on the edge, and we both were self-destructive in our own ways. In many ways, both of us, despite fame and whatever else we'd achieved so quickly, had remained very childlike and emotionally dependent. We wanted to find that same non-judgmental, unqualified love that our parents gave us. But let's stop for a minute and think about it. The question then is, if Elvis had married Ann-Margret instead, would the marriage have lasted, and if so, could she have inspired him to lead a happier, longer life? If Elvis had ended up with Thumper, this whole story might have wound up differently. Marty Lacker. While Ann-Margret didn't see show business as a concern in their private lives, some of Elvis's buddies saw it as a fatal obstacle in their relationship. Lamar Fike saw it this way. I think Elvis would have married her in a New York second, but he made it clear he'd do it only if Ann quit the business. Elvis believed in the old Southern idea of the wife stays home and cooks dinner and has it on the table when the husband gets home. And Ann was very career-orientated. She wouldn't do it. She'd worked all her life to get where she was, and she wasn't going to let anybody stand in her way. Their love affair had to end. Although they dated off and on for a year after filming Viva Las Vegas, Ann-Margret indicated they knew early on that their love affair had to end. His wish was that we could stay together, she explained, but of course we both knew that was impossible. Elvis and I knew he had commitments, promises to keep, and he vowed to keep his word. They talked about marriage, she confirms, trying to convince each other that it could work. We were so alike, so compatible. Elvis didn't like strong, aggressive women, and I posed no threat there. He, on the other hand, was strong, gentle, exciting, and protective. Just the qualities I liked. But it was just wishful thinking. We were never engaged. Ann-Margret declared with finality. In May 1967, Elvis married Priscilla, and Ann-Margret married Roger Smith. Could Ann-Margret have saved Elvis? It's obvious that Elvis and Ann-Margret shared a relationship of deep affection, trust, and respect that lasted until Elvis's death in 1977. But to return to the question at hand, if they had married, could it have lasted? And could she have saved Elvis? I think not on the first question, which makes the second question a hollow one. In spite of Ann-Margret's assertion that it was not an obstacle in their relationship, her show business career would surely have been a divisive issue in a marriage with Elvis. Everybody knew how difficult it would be for Elvis to watch his wife's movies. He didn't want to look up on a movie screen and see her in bed kissing somebody. He couldn't have handled it. What would have destroyed an Elvis-Ann-Margret marriage the fastest, however, would have been Elvis's persistent womanizing. Elvis never stopped seeing other women. Even when he was dating Ann-Margret, I think he thought he had to do it like it was expected of him, according to Marty Lacker. In marriage, their respective show business obligations would have kept Elvis and Ann-Margret away from each other for considerable periods of time. Elvis's record of philandering, both in and out of marriage, makes it almost certain he would have been unfaithful to anyone he married. Ann-Margret may have accepted it as Elvis's girlfriend, but it's hard to imagine she would have put up with it as his wife. Since it's unlikely then that a marriage between Elvis and Ann-Margret could have survived, she, like Priscilla, would not have been around to help guide Elvis to a happier, more fulfilling life. In the end, Ann-Margret was fated to stand on the sidelines, along with all the rest of us, and watch as a person she loved slowly self-destructed. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What happened? Not on what might have happened. May Elvis's life have had a happier ending had he married Ann-Margret instead of Priscilla?